Hello and welcome to Faultlines on NDTV World. I'm Gaurie, Dwivedi. This is the show where we decode the truth behind the headlines and beyond the divide. Today, Israel expands its operations into Gaza while Donald Trump skips Jerusalem and woos Arab leaders. What does that mean? What's the fault line? We decode that for you. And later, we look at why militia leaders are in fact ensuring that they push Africa's Libya further into yet another civil turmoil. Both these stories that will expose the fault lines. Now to our first story. Viewers, there are fault lines around the world, and this is the show that is going to uncover the truth behind every one of those fault lines. And the deepest such runs through the Israel-Gaza issue, the war that has been ongoing since Hamas butchered over 1,200 Israelis on the 7th of October 2023, took 250 Israelis as hostage. Since then, Israel has vowed to eliminate Hamas, the terrorist organization that actually started this. But since then, there's also been a regime change in the US. There's now Donald Trump who wants to end this war. He has not been able to because there are also many moving parts to this. In fact, he has backed Israel, but only so much. And now, sensing Washington's shifting stance, Netanyahu is hoping to make gains on ground, on Gaza military, before actually ensuring that those peace talks become more productive. But wars have consequences, viewers. They have consequences for people, for children. And this is the report that tells you how the renewed ground assault in Gaza, which is aimed to have better diplomatic wins on peace talks on a negotiating table, hurts the most where it does. Children, take a look at this report.
Amid stalled ceasefire talks and fading support from Washington, a threatened Prime Minister Netanyahu expanded Israel's large-scale offensive across Gaza to take over the enclave, even if all that's left is a pile of rubble. The war that began almost 2 years ago has left nothing except destroyed cities, dead bodies buried under rubble, and shattered dreams of a life that could have been. Yet, for the past 3 months, Israel was fighting a war beyond missiles and attacks. One that doesn't hurt pockets, where people die slowly and silently. Israel waged a war of hunger. According to a UN agency, 9 out of 10 children in Gaza are at risk of famine due to the ongoing blockade. People of all ages, from infants to pregnant women, all have been reported to have been suffering from some form of malnourishment, with some resorting to eating animal food and even flour mixed with sand. Finally, after 11 weeks, the first trickle of aid finally entered Gaza on Monday. G7 countries, UK, France and Canada condemned Netanyahu's escalation, demanding for an immediate ceasefire, calling for immediate action to end Israel's aid blockade. Netanyahu's playing the double game, trying to appease Washington by signaling he's ready for a truce, all while trying to seize control of the enclave. It remains to be seen what Trump 2.0's next moves will be after a Middle East trip which did not have a Tel Aviv hop.
So how did we actually reach here? A war that started on the 7th of October 2023 looked like some positive gains were being made in terms of some sort of a settlement, but here we are, probably furthest away from peace than when it all started. And the reason for that is the power play that is underway in Middle East and exactly what we now need to decode. Let's put out some of those details for you to understand what exactly is the power play in the Middle East that is impacting why peace is not taking place. So on one end, you have Donald Trump, who's wooing Arab leaders. He's putting business at the forefront of his entire negotiation when it comes to the Middle East. And of course, billions and billions of dollars of contracts are being signed. Remember, he had a very successful Middle East trip that included UAE, it included Qatar, which has been pretty much the masterminds or at least the main funders and backers of Hamas. Qatar was there, UAE was there, and of course KSA, that is Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, but what is happening? US has lifted sanctions on Syria and has left Israel completely out of when it comes to those Syria talks. That is extremely important because he's mainstreamed al-Shara's regime. 6 months back, he was a global terrorist with $10 million of bounty on his head. Let's move ahead. Some of the other important aspects. Well, he's also ensured that he's cut a deal with Yemen's Houthis, again leaving Israel completely out of it. So you can see what Donald Trump is doing. He's trying to find some sort of possible ways to cut deals, reach some peace truce possible in the region without having Israel at the center of it. And that's most important. And now what else has happened is that while these truce deals does not include Israel, there have also been complete ignorance as far as the Israel-Iran hostilities that have taken place. Why? Because there is some negotiation taking place between US and Iran on nuclear possibilities. Is there a nuclear pact in the offing? No one knows. But the fact that those are progressing, those talks are progressing, keeping Israel completely out is something that needs to be kept in mind to understand the fault line that has happened. And lastly, the delay tactics that Israel has been coming out with has been ignored as deals have been cut to ensure American hostages have been released. The last of the American hostages, viewers, was actually released just before Donald Trump embarked on his Middle East tour. That, of course, was pressure tactics, with Qatar ensuring that their final last American hostage was released. No word on the 59. We're going to come back to that because that's important. That's where it started. But this is the context to understand why there is a complete shift in the power dynamics that have actually taken place in the Middle East. You have Donald Trump isolating Netanyahu, and at this stage, it almost looks like there is a possibility of this not moving ahead till the time there is a breakthrough as far as talks are concerned. What those will be is something that we're going to wait and watch out for. But I want to now quickly run you through the other segment, which we call blinkers off, viewers, which is that, make no mistake, this is a war that Hamas started on the 7th of October, and now it is wanting to end the war on its own terms too, which of course cannot happen because there are, as I said, 60 Israelis held in captivity in Gaza by Hamas in the most inhuman conditions that are possible. And unless those hostages are released, there is no deal on the table. And that's Netanyahu's message to Hamas all along. But in 19 months, something has changed. Because as that message he's trying to put out louder and clearer, Netanyahu has upped the ante with a ground assault in a region that's been battered by war. We played out some of those visuals, didn't we, viewers? And images of children dying of possible starvation is a global PR disaster that no ally will back Netanyahu on. One can, of course, discard some of those statistics. They are the statistics put forth by Hamas. They will, of course, be exaggerated. But no matter what the number may be, that is an image that no ally will back Netanyahu on. Certainly not Trump, who has been frustrated by lack of progress in the peace settlement talks. The fact that Netanyahu is now getting increasingly more isolated is something that needs to be now kept into mind whenever there is some peace talks take place. He's now maybe forced to open aid because starvation concerns will have to be addressed. But will that end the ground assault? Answer, unfortunately, may not be a resounding yes, viewers. And that is the crux of the issue. It will end when the hostages return. And Netanyahu, unfortunately, now he needs to understand that he has limited options. A frustrated Trump administration is engaging with all stakeholders, excluding Israel, excluding Tel Aviv. A disinterested America will mean few takers for Bibi's military assaults and expose Netanyahu for greater global censure. The EU suspending trade with Israel could be the beginning for more actions as that outrage increases. Why? Because of those visuals. Netanyahu must make way for more aid, bring the focus back on the 59 Israelis with hope of their return dwindling every single day. In fact, viewers, on that note, I'm going to slip into a very short break, come back on the other side, talk about, as I said, the other fault line, what's happening in Libya. Stay with us. Next fault line, viewers, is one that few are talking about. One with many ramifications, the escalating situation that's unfolding in Libya. Libya's decade-long fragile peace is no more. There are violent clashes that have flared up in Libya's capital, Tripoli, after the killing of an influential militia leader who held the reins of the capital. Before we look at the shifting power dynamics in the region, let's lay out the groundwork. Let's talk about why exactly we are mentioning Libya here. It's located in the northern Africa's Maghreb region. Let's put that out on the map. You can see that. So that is Libya for you, that's Tripoli for you. And it's a fractured polity because there's parts of it that's ruled by one entity, another by another. It is a strategic location that links Africa's landlocked countries to Europe through the Mediterranean Sea, which is why there are at least half a dozen countries around the world interested in Libya. The political landscape remains fragmented, two rival factions stuck in a power tussle. There is the Government of National Unity, the GNU, and there is the Government of National Stability, GNS, the red and blue, indicating who actually holds power in which region. And at the end of the day, both, of course, are backed by Western powers, and at the same time, one side is backed by, GNS is backed by the Libyan National Army, leading to the de facto division of the country. The rest of the region is controlled by smaller militias that are there. Now, let's talk about the key players that are there in this battle for Libya. One, of course, the internationally recognized Libyan Prime Minister. He's got the backing of the UN. He has vowed to crack down on the militias. And, of course, at the same time, he's now facing growing demands to resign because, guess what? He's not been able to consolidate even the parts that are under GNU. So, and he seized power in 2021. He postponed the elections indefinitely since then. So, this is a regime, remember, there was an autocratic ruler earlier, Gaddafi. The other leaders are also equally in the same way in terms of how they want to control Libya. Let's come to the other one, which is Khalifa Haftar. He is, of course, of the Libyan National Army, the force behind GNS, the one we showed with the blue aspects in Libya. He's an ex-officer under Gaddafi. He later, of course, overthrew him. He's a self-styled general backed by the Libyan parliament. And he's, of course, backed by Russia as well. He met President Putin on the 7th of May. As I said, there's a reason why global players are interested in Libya. A, because of its strategic location. B, because of the oil that we're going to come back to later. Let's now talk about the other person, which is the militia leader who was actually killed, Al-Kikli, who is the mayor of Tripoli and an extremely influential militia leader whose death, whose killing actually started and was the catalyst for the kind of killings, the kind of sudden flare-ups that we saw unfold in Libya in the last 1 week or so. There's been a delicate peace, delicate ceasefire, all of which has been completely broken after the killing of this man that you see on your screen. So, well, as far as he's concerned, his forces had overtaken some of the key state institutions, including the Central Bank of Libya, and then, of course, he was killed in an armed attack on the military base that we're putting out. Okay, now, before we talk any further, I want to quickly now play out this report that tells you exactly how these players have been jockeying for influence in the country, and could the killing of Al-Kikli actually be an inflection point in Libya? This report tells you.
Libya has taken to the streets yet again, with capital Tripoli rocked by violence. Across Tripoli's Martyr Square, thousands of Libyans threaten the nation's strongman, Prime Minister Abdulhamid Dabaiba. Step down or the nation will topple your government. Waves of violence have taken over the North African nation over the past week as deadly clashes and anti-government protests have sparked fear of another civil war. The trigger, the killing of influential militia chief Abdul Ghani al-Kikli in an ambush at a military base and the subsequent defeat of the SSA, one of Tripoli's powerful armed groups, by factions aligned with Prime Minister Dabaiba. As leader of the SSA, Kikli was a brutal man, accused of extrajudicial killings, torture, and serious human rights violations, with his group behind the violence inside Libya's detention centers. While the nation is deeply divided under two rival governments, the internationally recognized Government of National Unity in the West and Government of National Stability, backed by Libyan National Army, in the East. Capital Tripoli is perhaps the most fractured, splintered between several rivaling militias jockeying for influence. Using Kikli's death, Dabaiba attempted to take control of the capital from armed militias, vowing to dismantle them and sparking days of armed clashes and gunfire across the city, reportedly killing 8 and injuring dozens. In a move to reclaim authority, the Libyan Prime Minister declared that the country is entering a decisive phase in reclaiming state authority from powerful armed militia.
ضد من هم يحاولوا تدمير ليبيا وتدمير مؤسساتها. المستقبل الحقيقي للدولة هي الجيش والشرطة وفقط، لا يمكن أن يشاركهم حد ثاني. تخشوا في الشرطة وفي الجيش واللي بيدعمنا في هذا المشروع احنا أهلا وسهلا به. تأخرنا صح تأخرنا، لكن اليوم بدينا بهذا المشروع وبعون الله سنصل إلى ما نبتغي إن شاء الله.
Rival government leader Osama Hamad has rejected Dabaiba's moves, accusing the Libyan leader of distorting reality and evading responsibility, calling for a unified government in the country, given the Libyan government voted to end Dabaiba's term in office last year.
كما أن صمت مجلس الأمن والمجتمع الدولي إزاء ما يجري يثير العديد من التساؤلات ويعد موقفا محبطا في ظل ما تشهده العاصمة من انتهاكات لحقوق الإنسان وتهديدا للسلم الاجتماعي.
Libya has seen little calm over the past decade since a NATO-led intervention brought down the Gaddafi regime. Home to Africa's largest proven oil reserves, Libya is also an important way station for migrants heading to Europe. Many see Kikli's killing as an inflection point, one that could decide the nation's future: civil war or a unified government.
All right, so you heard exactly what has been happening in Libya, the power struggles that have been taking place. And before I get in a voice from ground to understand what's the situation right now, I want to tell you why is it that we are talking about Libya, why it matters. This country is important for several reasons. Let's put that out. It's a key route as far as trade is concerned. It's an important country from a oil point of view. It links, of course, to the trade part. As I said, it is important because of the trade routes it establishes. From an economic point of view, there are large reserves that are there of oil. 93% of the country is dependent on hydrocarbons. And of course, from a human point of view, it is important because of the illegal immigration route to Europe actually comes via Libya to a large extent. And to talk about all this, why Libya matters, what the situation is right now on ground, I want to get in Naba Moiddin, who's joining me live from Port Sudan, to speak to me about what the situation is right now in Libya. Naba, thank you so much for speaking to me. I want to understand from you what really is the situation on ground right now, the tension, the turmoil, the conflict that is in Libya. Explain to us what is the ground situation.
Thank you. Actually, the situation in Libya is worrying as the deadly clash is renewed following the killing of the militia leader that triggered mass demonstrations in Tripoli, where hundreds of thousands of people are gathering, calling for the resignation of the Prime Minister Abdulhamid Dibeba, while other protesters in Misrata are calling and supporting the Prime Minister. So this is a real challenge for the Libyans, and it's a critical time that Libyans are going through because of the divisions, and we know that already Libya has suffered from such divisions that led to the formation of two parallel governments back in 2021. So the situation in Libya is worrying. Although that United Nations and Libya's government called for and actually formed a truce committee for to achieve a successful ceasefire, and we are expecting a calmer situation in the coming days, but the challenge remains on the hand of the Prime Minister Abdulhamid Dibeba to adhere Libyans' aspiration to at least adhere their aspiration of resignation. We saw that 3 ministers have resigned because of the turmoil in Libya, and they are supporting the protesters, yes, while the government denied all of these resignations. So the situation in Libya is really critical and putting the country into a crossroad that will not only impact Libyans but also impact the regions, especially Sudan, which share a very important and a very, yes, big borders with Libya, and eastern Libya, which is controlled by Khalifa Haftar, is actually impacting the war in Sudan. Yes. So the stabilization of Libya will impact the region, yes, and will impact the whole North African countries definitely.
Since 2011, viewers, Libya has had no peace after autocrat ruler Muammar Gaddafi was ousted. And since 2020, some sort of a ceasefire did come about, but it fell apart at the first spark that flew because power dynamics in the region and in the country are such. Well, now there is fighting that is underway. Libya has been a key battleground country for great powers. Different countries supporting different militia groups for different reasons, backing the two parallel and rival governments that exist there. The UN recognized one in Tripoli has the support of major powers, but the East-based GNS, which is backed by the Libyan National Army, is better armed. It is better equipped. In fact, Marshal Haftar of the LNA has invested heavily in arms from Russia and Egypt and several others, and regularly gets military instructors from across Europe to train his men. So if the two governments actually fight, you know which one is going to win, and that adds to the instability, doesn't it? His military budget is also bigger than GNU, which is backed by UN. Now, the regional powers, that is Qatar and Turkey, are very active in Libya, directly and through the militia groups that they support. And in fact, it's a weapon for their strategy of influence in the region. Both America and Russia are engaging with both the rival governments at the same time, adding to Libya's fragmentation. For Libya to be united, viewers, sanctions must be imposed on all these militia groups that operate there. The foreign bases that major powers operate must be handed over to the government, and peacekeeping forces need to be deployed. But who's listening? Because right now, Libya is at the center of a geopolitical game, and no power wants to be left behind. On that note, viewers, we wrap things up on this edition of Faultlines. We're going to come back next week with another instance, another reason why the world's fault lines need to be studied in greater detail. Thank you so much for watching.